Our final speaker is Margaret Stock. She's an attorney specializing in immigration, military law. She's a retired lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army. She was a professor of law at the U.S. Military Academy at West Point, and in 2013 she was named a MacArthur Foundation Fellow. Please welcome Margaret Stock.
Bring that microphone down by yourself.
All right. Well, I'm looking out on the audience, and I realize it's dominated by one particular ethnic group tonight, given the green. So I want to make you feel at home. So, Giagwit, Konasatatu? All right. Your Gaelic's a little rusty. Okay. I find it interesting that we're all celebrating St. Patrick's Day today because in addition to being an immigration lawyer, I've studied immigration law history. And about 200 years ago, Americans were not happy with all those Irish immigrants coming into America. We called them names. We said they were intemperate. They drank too much. They were speaking Gaelic and not learning English. And look, none of you speak Gaelic anymore. You're all speaking English only, looks like. So I find that interesting. And we also, even today, have a mayor of Irish heritage. And no one thinks that's particularly remarkable. So tonight I want to talk to you about one of the great strengths of our city, which is the immigrants who contribute to our diversity. Others have mentioned them, but I want to tell you a few stories about some of the folks that are we okay now? We lost the...
Why don't you hand it to me and I'll see if I can...
You're going to reconnect it. Okay, you can go to the next one. Who are making our city stronger and more diverse. And of course, we had an economist speaking earlier, so I have to give you some numbers. Because I unfortunately, at one point in my life, I was an economics major. Shh, don't tell anybody that. And probably contributes somewhat to my interest in immigration. But we have a lot of data on immigrants in Alaska, and of course, Anchorage is the center of immigrants in Alaska. We have a very large number of immigrants here. More than half the state's immigrants have settled in Anchorage. So I want to give you a little bit of data on that. We have about 7% of Alaskans overall who are foreign-born. It's a little bit higher in Anchorage. 11% roughly are Asian or Latino, not Irish. More than 50% of the immigrants who've come to Alaska have become naturalized American citizens. There are about 7% of the registered voters, new Americans. More than 90% of the children of the immigrants here in Alaska are U.S. citizens. More than 90% of the children with immigrant parents are English proficient. So you often hear worries out there in the community that people aren't learning English, but they are. By the second generation, we've beat that foreign language out of them, and they are becoming rapidly English only. We have a highly educated immigrant population. More than 80% of our naturalized citizens have a high school diploma or higher. More than 600 foreign students at the University of Alaska. They're contributing a lot of money to our state's economy, making up about 9% of our workforce today. And on the good news front, very few immigrants in Alaska are not lawfully here. Less than 2% of the workforce is unauthorized, and the government estimates are that fewer than 10,000 people in the state of Alaska are unauthorized immigrants. This group represents a tremendous amount of economic power for our community, and a sense of vibrancy and energy comes from the immigrants who have settled in Anchorage. And I just want to tell you a couple of stories really quickly. The next slide shows you some of the unique immigrant stories you might not be aware of. One of the reasons I got the MacArthur Fellowship was for dreaming up a program to increase the diversity in the U.S. Armed Forces, and naturally, immigrants in Alaska decided to take advantage of that program, including a large number of runners from UAA who ran off and joined the Army. Sorry, Professor Knapp, I think they're not taking classes anymore. Instead, they are speaking Swahili and other languages for the United States military, and they're running for the U.S. Army World Class Athlete Program. They are now American citizens as a result of their military service, and we expect some of them may end up on the U.S. Olympic team. Next slide. Some of the contributing immigrants, though, that you may not know about are populating our military bases up here, including this young woman who is from China And in the picture here is being given an award, an Army Commendation Medal by the commander of U.S. Army Alaska for translating what Chinese generals were saying to the general when the Chinese visited Fort Richardson, J-Bear, on a recent trip. And she has a law degree and is actually a lawyer in the United States, but the Army in its infinite wisdom made her a truck driver. And then when the Chinese general showed up at J-Bear, they needed somebody to translate what the Chinese generals were saying, so they pulled her out of the ranks, and she did such a great job telling our general what the other generals were saying that they gave her an award. So those are just a few of the stories. I could go on all day about the wondrous things immigrants do to contribute to Alaska and to Anchorage, but in the interest of giving you the economic bottom line here, if we're running out of money, one of the things we want to do is get more immigration into Alaska, because with immigrants, we get a better bang for our buck. Next slide. These folks are disproportionately contributing to our economy, and you can see kind of the 10% there of business owners in Alaska are immigrants. The new business owners, very large number, and net business income is very high. And that tracks social and economic trends that you would expect. People who pick up from their home country and move to a strange land tend to be maybe a little more energetic and a little bit more on the get up and go than folks that have been in one place all their life. We are today, though, having a big debate on immigration, and it's epitomized by the fact that the Taoiseach, the head leader, political leader in Ireland today, visited Washington, D.C., and urged President Obama, who apparently was looking at his watch, to reform immigration. He praised the president for his courage. Enda Kenny said that there are a lot of unauthorized Irish immigrants in America today. 200 years after large waves of Irish immigrants came to America, there's still lots of Irish immigrants coming to America, but many of them, unfortunately, are challenged by our complex legal immigration system, and they cannot get legal. And the Taoiseach thinks this is a big enough problem that he wanted to come today on the biggest holiday in Ireland to Washington and talk to the President of the United States and encourage him to carry out immigration reform. And I think that's the last point that I want to make. We hear a lot of controversy in the news today about immigration, but for Anchorage, it's clearly been a net benefit to our economy and to our community. As one of the generals I worked for when I was serving in the U.S. Army and working on trying to recruit immigrants said, our diversity is our strength. And the diversity of Anchorage has indeed contributed to our economic strength, our social strength, and our success as a community. So I hope we'll be able to serve as a model to the rest of the country, which has not necessarily been as welcoming to immigrants as Anchorage has been. And we can serve as a lesson for those folks who are afraid that we can't absorb immigrants. More than 200 years of history have taught us that America is very good at absorbing immigrants. And you know, those of you out in the audience today who are, I'm standing between you and your O'Douls, or maybe your Guinness if you're a risk taker, you know that, okay? So thank you very much. Guramagat, Slan.